So, pranam to all of you from Delhi. So maybe you can infer from the curtain style in my back. So I arrived to India yesterday. Yeah, after, as you may already know, after our beautiful retreat, Radical Personalism retreat in the UK. And somehow now I'm feeling like an extension of that, because almost all of you are here now. And that was how we say goodbye the other day, was see you on Saturday. to not create such a tragic sense of separation. See you the day after tomorrow or something like that. And here it is. Although 3D, there's no comparison, 3D with 2D, but let's not underestimate the power of Zoom. So happy to be here with all of you. And yeah, as you know, I'm missing many of you who were not there, because also last Saturday we didn't have our meeting due to the retreat. So it was a very immersive experience for all of us, very interesting, very dynamic, at least for me, very, how to say, endearing to all the participants, and a great opportunity to live radical personalism, like all together under the same roof for 10 days. Let's see how much we are willing to walk our talk. And I would say that we succeeded somehow by Krishna's mercy, relatively. No, we didn't kill each other to begin with. And we had a very beautiful coexisting together and sharing, in circle sharing, in our ISTAGOSTHIs, in the lectures, and different pillars, which somehow, of course, I know that many of you were not there physically, but we're trying to follow them online as a way of being part. So yeah, it was very, very, for me, very touching experience to see a book called Radical Personalism taking a very unique, particular shape, an active, dynamic form in how 20 something radical personalists embrace the teachings and try to apply them in relationship with each other on a daily basis, in a very, how to say, absorbing dynamics on a daily basis. So that was a nice test, so to say. How much does this work when applied in this particular setting and work? So very happy to have had that, to have been able to witness such a result. I'm very grateful to all those who participated, as we already made that clear the other day among each other. So here in Delhi now, yesterday arrived, so still aligning with the local timing and the local weather, because here is quite hot. UK was quite the opposite. So aligning to the particular constellation we are in. Tomorrow we will have some program with local devotees here. Probably I'll try to stream it. Let's see if Wi-Fi accompanies. Let's see which topics manifest. And then on Monday morning, go into Vrindavan for some days. And then Mayapur and so on and so forth. But yeah, next ISTAGOSTHI will be there in Brajdam, hopefully sharing with all of you. So after the brief introduction, I invite any of you who may have any sharing, whatever you may like to share with us. As we were redefining our meetings the other day, Bhakti Rasa said that instead of saying Q&A, we should say Q&E. Now, so no questions and answers, but quest and exploration. So we are exploring together, and it's a journey unto itself, trying to live into better questions, as we were talking the other day, not necessarily finding full closure in definitive answers, but trying to live into better questions in connection to, as Manjwali will lovely say it, an ever-evolving mystery that the sweet absolute is. So here we are all together, bearing witness to such a mystery, and seeing what the mystery wants to reveal to us today. So whomever has any questions, comments, sharings, I see 3 raised hands. So the first one in the queue is Jugal Kishore. So you can unmute yourself, Jugal Kishore ji. whenever you want.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please accept I turning my camera off for a moment just because I'm outside in the sun and I don't want to be blinded or blind anybody else.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It was great seeing the retreat that you guys did. Maybe I was one step behind Rasangi in terms of participating from afar, but I still felt like I was there in spirit, and it looked lovely, and I can't wait till we do something similar in the U.S. Hopefully, maybe next year.
Let's see. Sounds good.
Yeah. So Swami, I kind of had asked you, mentioned some of these questions recently, and I think they're sort of tied together. There's a personal note to this, simply because a very dear friend and teacher of mine is part of the Ramakrishna mission, and it's a slightly different philosophical outlook. I've mentioned him in the past too, I think, but he's just such a dear person to me that, I'm trying to come to a point where theological differences aren't the all in all. So the specific question, has to do with jnana and bhakti, and when and where and how one is subservient to the other or subordinate to the other. And those words are just coming to my mind right now. It doesn't have to be those words in terms of, is there a hierarchy, you might say? How much are they really actually just different faces of the very same thing? And on that note, I like to think in terms of like the biblical word for knowing. Forgive me that I don't have the Hebrew or Greek on hand, but to know in the biblical sense is to love. So my feeling is that really they are pretty much the same thing. And then from a slightly different perspective, I guess, I still get very confused and fumble when we use words like non-dualism, radical non-dualism, monism, dualism. So, we're experiencing the world mostly just through our own eyes, through our own experience, which is, one thing. So in what sense is it not one? In what sense, I had just said to my friend, like, I think Maya as illusion is an illusion. It's an illusion that it's an illusion because it's actually real. It's not unreal. The world of experience of appearance.
Let's stop there, Jugal Kishore, because so far we have like 7 questions approx in your, in your presentation.
Yes. So yes. No problem.
That's not to lose sight of all the different things you are asking about. So
yes, go ahead, please, Swami.
Can I start with some points regarding what you share? Yeah. Okay. That seems like a yes. So okay. That was what I was waiting for. Thank you. So, of course, as you say, Bhakti and Gyan, what's the difference between them, or what's the meaning of them? These are terms, again, these are words, and how we use the words in which context, particularly Sanskrit words, which can have so many meanings. The same word, sometimes even opposite meanings. So which context we use the word, it's all about context. That's something very interesting about Sanskrit. That if you if you have a word without context, you don't know what the word means. Because it has so many meanings that it can mean all of them until and unless you are putting the word in a context, and then you know what the word actually intended to be. So it's a very context-sensitive language, which somehow reflects life, right? Because depending on the environment, depending on the context of a particular situation, person, experience, that will be translated, so to say, that will have a certain meaning, a particular one. So words like bhakti and gyan will mean different things to different people, what to speak of the context. So of course, bhakti translates as devotion, devotional love, devotional service, different ways of translating these words, which in itself is a challenge to translate them into any other language. It's a type of loving adoration. And gyan generally is translated as knowledge, although again, in certain contexts, gyan can mean other things like consciousness, not like when the Bhagavatam says, advai gyan tattva. Gyan there means knowledge. Reality is non-dual consciousness. Sorry, there means not consciousness. But how you present it, and in the context of Advaita Vedanta, I assume in connection to your friend, the Ramakrishna mission, gyan is described as a process, as we have karma, gyan, bhakti, these three main processes. Sometimes yoga is mentioned as a fourth one, Patanjali's yoga. But let's keep it to gyan and bhakti. So in that case, gyan refers to the process adopted by the jnanis, and this corresponds with Advaita Vedanta, a certain particular process of studying the Vedanta, lots of scriptural study, lots of emphasis in vairagya, renunciation, detachment, and of course, a very different orientation to reality than a non-Advaitic school, so to say, because in most cases, an Advaita Vedantin will consider, at least in general, again, I'm talking in general, that the world is an illusion, that everything is an illusion except for Brahma. So that's a very different orientation to ours, where we will say nothing is actually an illusion in one sense. In one sense, everything is hyper real, and Krishna is present everywhere. And Krishna is a person, and is real, and I'm a person, and I'm real, and the world is real, and Maya is real. Although we call it illusion, illusion exists. The effect that we perceive through illusion. Of course, Maya can mean many things again. Can refer to illusion, can refer to the material energy per se. Maya is another word for mercy. So which Maya we're talking about? So in Advaita Vedanta, Bhakti is seen as, let's say, as a useful tool to eventually attain the ultimate realization of Gyan. So Advaita Vedanta is another way of speaking about Gyan, this process that has as its goal Brahma Sayuja. Not even merging with Brahman in general, but realizing that there's nothing but Brahman. Because when we say I'm merging with Brahman, there's still someone merging into something else. But in general, Advaita Vedanta will say, no, there's no something else. There's only Brahman. The idea of something else is in symptoms of illusion. And of course, there's a whole conversation, and the Vaishnavas have engaged fiercely into debate, saying, okay, but if everything is Brahman, why we are not aware of that? And if Maya is the reply to that, then from where Maya is coming if there's only Brahman? And how can exist something else called Maya, and on top of that, cover Brahman? Anyhow, that's another conversation. So they may adopt bhakti as a means to their goal of gyan, but whenever, as close as they get to their realization, their impersonal realization, as we will call it, generally speaking, again, I'm generalizing, they will discard bhakti as a means to absorb themselves in their monistic realization, which is called radical non-dualism, as I mentioned in my book, Radical Personalism, because they are radically non-dual, which means to the root, they say that there's nothing but Brahman. And of course, we will kind of say the same thing, but quickly qualify that statement. Yeah, there's nothing but the Absolute, who, Brahman is a name for the Absolute, who has unlimited energies, and one is us, one is Bhakti, one is matter, and these energies have their own existence separate from Brahman, but at the same time, of course, they're not different from him in terms of interconnectedness with the source, and from there we have our philosophy, Bhed, Abhed. But again, they will adopt bhakti. So it may seem external. They may be chanting, doing kirtan, singing Mahamantra, worshipping the deity. And for the untrained eye, one may think, oh, here's a Gaudiya Vaishnava. But then, yeah, you have to inspect which is their Sambandha and which is their Prayojan. In terms of Avideya, it may seem they're doing the same thing, but their Sambandha or orientation to the practice may be quite different, and the Prayojan will be also different. As we talked many times, there are some practitioners who aspire for Brahma Sayuja while acknowledging that there are other levels of realization of the Absolute, like Paramatma Bhagavan, which are eternal, so to say. And they, although Paramatma is in one sense not eternal realization, as we already talked before, since it's a provisional presence of God in the heart of the Jiva while the Jiva is conditioned. And generally, the goal is forms of Bhagavan or Brahman. So some people, like I know many, we talked the other day about that a few weeks ago. Some people may aspire for merging in Brahman while acknowledging Bhagavan is an eternal manifestation of the Absolute. So that's a different case. Sometimes a terminological difference is made, though this is not Shastric, that those who want to merge into Brahman but acknowledge Bhagavan and so on, they call Brahmavadis. And those who want say that there's only Brahman and Bhagavan actually does not exist eternally, they're called Mayavadis. But again, this is not something that I, at least to my knowledge, is a Shastric definition. It's just how it came to be said to make that difference. So my point was that for a Jnani, Bhakti is a provisional, useful tool, let's put it that way, to get closer to the goal of Brahman. Now, for us, Bhaktas, that doesn't work in the other way. It's not that, okay, first we have to become Jnanis, so then we become Bhaktas. No? As we know, and as I try to mention in my first book, Bhakti comes from Bhakti. Bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya, says the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya, which means Bhakti comes from Bhakti, and Bhakti takes to Bhakti. So I start practicing Bhakti by the grace of Bhakti. I don't need to practice something else. And by doing Bhakti, I attain the goal of Bhakti, which is Bhakti, in a more amplified expression, and so on and so forth, eternally in ever-evolvingness. Here, as you can hear in the back, or maybe you cannot, you're fortunate enough to not, but they are start to celebrate Diwali 1 month with 1 month in anticipation, throwing all these like. So you can imagine how relaxed resting I'm having at night. Anyhow, that was just like the advertisement section for a few seconds. So for us, Gyan will be conceived differently. For us, Gyan has to do, because Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, gives some sort of gradation. First, he's talking about karma yoga and saying that you have to engage in work in the world according to your acquired nature without expectation or attachment for the result of your action. By doing that, naturally, some knowledge comes as a realization of that, and that knowledge leads to certain type of detachment. But then comes the famous statements, different ones in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna makes it clear that it doesn't end there. For those who are starting in that sequence, because people can do that type of sequence. In our case, it's Bhakti from Bhakti toward further Bhakti. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes statements like, for example, the last verse of the 6th chapter of the Gita, Yogi nama pishar visham matgati nantaratmana shradhavam bhajate jumam same yukta-vairagya. Krishna says, he's describing all these different yogis. Chapter 6, at this point, he already talked about the karma yogi, the Gyan yogi. The 6th chapter is dhyana yoga. So he's talking about karma Gyan yoga. And he's ending the first 6 chapters of the Gita, which mostly deal with karma in general, although he mentions Gyan and yoga. And now he's about to start the 6 intermediate chapters, which are centered around Bhakti. So he's preparing the ground, and he's concluding the first 6 chapters when he speaks again about Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Dhyana Yogi. And he says, from all yogis, Yogi nam api sarvesham, among all yogis, Same yukta-tama mataha, the highest one of all, Shradabham bhajate jaman srame yuktatama. Yoginam api sarvasam madgatenantaratmana. He who is residing in me internal, he who has me internally in deep presence, who has me present internally very deeply with great faith, he's worshipping me. Shradabham bhajate jamam. He who is engaged in bhajan with Shraddha, basically, he's the highest one. So he's referring to the bhakta there. So Krishna clearly makes a hierarchy here. Because again, here it's talking about yogas, different yogas. And yoga means the act of uniting, or the act of being united also. So what's the highest type of union? Love. Therefore, bhakti is, and of course, some people say you are just fanatics promoting your own path, but of course we have our own way to explain that. And to say, okay, karma, jnana, all these other yogas, meditation, action, knowledge, all them find their perfect expression in bhakti. Bhakti is the king of all actions, the king of all knowledge, the king of all meditation, love. What highest meditation you can have that falling in love with God? What highest action you can have by dedicating every one of your actions in love to God? And speaking about jnana, knowledge, Krishna says that a few chapters after Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam. He's talking about bhakti there, and he's defining bhakti as the king of all knowledge. So for us, knowledge has to do with ultimately love, as you mentioned also, Yugal Kishore. So ultimately, knowledge is not limited to reading a book, acquiring information, intellectual curiosity, and all that stuff, which can be there on some level. But the most comprehensive way of knowing something or someone is through love. I can know you technically, as they give the example. You can analyze an apple in the laboratory, and you get some knowledge about it. It's round, it's red, it smells like this. But if you give a bite to the apple, then you're having a very different type of knowledge, experiential knowledge. So love has to do with that, with something very experiential. So for us, bhakti is the king of knowledge. And whatever knowledge we acquire, for example, we have jnana. We speak about sambandha jnana, which is the foundation to our tradition, sambandha jnana, which is the study, Padhyaya, study of scriptures, in connection to how everything exists in relationship with Krishna, how everything is bonded, interconnected. So we have our own jnana, but jnana for us is not separate from bhakti. And I'm saying that because sometimes, of course, I've also seen devotees even, speaking in terms of bhakti, I'm thinking in bhakti in terms of service, and service for them is just doing things. So if you are reading a book, you're a jnani. And that's very unbecoming to think like that. Because you can be reading Shastra in the proper spirit, and that's bhakti. That's Shravanam. To read the book is Shravanam. You are reading printed sounds. So that falls into the category of Shravanam. That's the first anga of bhakti. Shravan, Kirtana, Vishnu, Sman. How can that be condemned? You are doing the first thing you are supposed to be doing. And sometimes in the name of bhakti, we may be over-engaging externally and become human doings instead of human beings with very little devotion internally. We just become a doing machine, and we translate that as service, devotional service, bhakti. But devotional service, devotion has to be there. I'm not against doing things, but is that bhakti or not? I don't know. We have to inspect the internal spirit behind the action. That's what determines whether we are doing bhakti or not. Bhakti is not an external thing. Bhakti is not doing things. Bhakti is how we are doing whatever we are doing. It has nothing to do with externals. That's why it's very difficult to understand, because someone may be sweeping the floor and maybe doing that in bhakti. So it doesn't seem like very mystical spiritual discipline, sweeping. But if that can be done in the proper context, and that's bhakti. And you can be, again, doing some other bhakti activities externally, but if the heart is not there, then that's something else. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verse 28, Asrada yahutam datam tapasaptam kritam chayat asaditi uchati partanacha tat pritinoiha. Whatever you do, be it worship, austerity, sacrifice, anything, that has to be done with faith. If that's done without faith, that action, Krishna says, he uses strong words, is asat, which translates as basically useless. In other words, don't try to cheat the system by doing things externally if the heart is not there. If there's no shraddha. Shraddha means a presentation of my heart. My heart is present inside my action. That's what determines the outcome, the result of that. So again, Sambandha Gyan means studying scripture, acquiring proper knowledge to orient our actions that will take to a certain goal. So that's bhakti as well. So we have our own type of gyan, but it's a gyan that is bhakti. Sambandha Gyan is bhakti. Criticize that. And we have to be careful not to take for granted that we are engaging in bhakti just because we are, how do you say in English? Multitasking person. That I end up doing 4 things at the same time. I'm a great devotee. I'm doing so much. Today I was talking with Sherry, and we were talking about Teresa de Lisieux. I don't know how you pronounce that properly. It's a French. She's a Christian mystic, and her path came to be known as the little way. And she will describe herself as a little flower. So her main mood was, I will do small things for God with great love. Instead of doing big things, who knows with which motivation. No? So sometimes we get accustomed, okay, if I do something big, whatever, that will impress the Krishna, that will impress the community, that will impress someone. I want to impress someone. I want no? And her own intention was, no, I will do the smallest thing possible with the greatest presence and dedication possible. That became known as her little way, so to say. So I appreciate that point, right? Because it's not about trying to take the attention of anyone, not trying to impress, but very secretly, very humbly, very intimately offering your heart to the highest possible degree. That's for me very much in line with Mahaprabhu saying, Amanina Manadina. No? Offer respect to everyone and do not trying to impress the world and throw light on yourself. No? So anyhow, a few thoughts. We could go on and on, but I hope that helps, Yugal Kishore. Sorry if I interrupted your question, and if I also missed some points that you were asking.
No, that's very helpful. I think the confusion was around the term.
Yeah, that can happen. Again, whenever we use these terms, it's always very prudent to ask those who are having the conversation, what do you mean by this? What's your understanding of that?
Understood.
What's your tradition's understanding of that? My tradition's understanding of that? Because again, we may be speaking in 2 different languages, though we are using the same words. That's
Right.
the most interesting thing, no? Because many times you speak in different languages and it's clear you are talking in 2 different languages. But when you use the same words, it gets more confusing because both think they understand each other and they're pointing to 2 different things. So yeah, it takes time to understand each other and have proper conversations sometimes. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Swami.
We'll go to the next question, quest, and exploration from Austria. Mayapur Sangam and Lakshmi Priya are there. Nice to see you, Pranam.
Haribol Maharaj, Haribol to everybody. Nice to be here. Maharaj, I would like to come back to the question I asked you last time, but it was too long for the Instagram. Questions and answers.
About Tyaga.
Yeah, and also like the real meaning of renunciation, like it's sometimes we just relate it to this external renunciation, that how can we practice that in daily life to come to that goal?
Yeah, thank you. So Lakshmi Priya's question from some days ago, or a few weeks maybe, was concerning one verse from the Bhagavatam. I don't recall the exact number. I remember it was from Canto 11.
Yes,
And
between
basically
the
say that, yeah, sorry. 11 what? You have the number there?
No, not really. I
No, it's
think
okay.
Canto 11, but shlokas of 36 to 39 or something like that.
Okay, the chapter you have to guess.
19, I think, but I'm not
Okay, okay.
sure.
Yeah, it's
I'm
fine, no
sorry.
problem. So basically, they say that of sannyas, among renunciation, if my memory is not failing, sannyas is kind of what represents renunciation. Not like Krishna many times says in the Gita, of these things I'm this, of these things I'm that. So of renunciation, I am the sannyas order. So she was asking, okay, how to understand that? What does it mean? And now, of course, the extended question of what's renunciation for us? No, how do we understand renunciation? So I will say that when that section of the Bhagavatam says, okay, of renunciation, sannyas order is what personifies that. Yeah, there's place to say that, since sannyas means renunciation. So it makes sense that in terms of the idea of renunciation, an official order that is a renounced order is what embodies what renunciation is about. Now, of course, the question is, so what renunciation is about for us? No? Because again, in each tradition, we were talking about Advaita Vedanta, for example, in the previous question, they have a different idea of renunciation. I mean, for them, renunciation is detachment from everything, no? From everything, to the point of detachment from the idea that you're an individual, even detachment from the idea that God exists as a separate person, and detachment, what to speak of externals, but even so many internals that for us are something that we cherish for eternity. So it's a very different idea of what to get detached from. In the Advaita Vedantic tradition also, they will emphasize renunciation as a almost prerequisite to attain mukti, to attain the goal. If you in Advaita Vedanta want to attain Brahma Sayuja, you have to accept sannyas first. If not, sorry, good luck, see you next time. No, that's basically the teaching in general. Probably neo-Advaitic Vedantin will say something different, but the classical teaching, vairagya, renunciation, is an anga of jnana, is an anga of their practice. In our tradition, Bhakti, you have these 64 angas, limbs of Bhakti, enunciated by Rupa Goswami. Nowhere you will see renunciation there. Actually, Rupa Goswami is more preventing than promoting renunciation in many ways. He's saying, watch out for mere renunciation, which sometimes we may call dry renunciation, because that may make your heart harder if you are only renouncing things as a practice. As for us, renunciation is not a practice. It's not like an anga of bhakti. Okay, now I will do renunciation. Now I will renounce. For us, it's more, now I will engage in bhakti, and as a byproduct of that, a certain renunciation will come. Not the opposite, not the other way around. Not by becoming more renounced, I will attain more bhakti. That will be a misunderstanding of the teaching. Because as I said before, bhaktya sanjatya bhaktya. Bhakti comes from bhakti. Bhakti doesn't come from jnana. Bhakti doesn't come from renunciation. Bhakti doesn't come from anything else. Bhakti is independent, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes beautiful point in the beginning of his Madhurya Kadambini. Bhakti comes from bhakti, and since bhakti is the highest thing, bhakti can only take you to bhakti. Because if bhakti takes you to something else, that something else will be higher than bhakti. But Shastra described that there's nothing higher than bhakti. Therefore, bhakti is its own source, its own means, its own goal, an ongoing, ever-evolving one. So we are kind of bhakti fanatics in that sense, but with scriptural foundation. So for us, renunciation is not about rejecting anything, save and except one thing. No, as Srila Prabhupada once said, I quoted this a few times, when one devotee told Prabhupada, for your sake, I'm willing to renounce everything. And Prabhupada said, the only thing you need to renounce is the idea that you have to renounce anything. No, that's a way of putting it. No, in our tradition, we will have anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. No? The Saranagati, surrender, starts with accepting, determining myself and accepting whatever is favorable for bhakti, and rejecting what's unfavorable for bhakti. So we have to renounce what's unfavorable. Now, what's unfavorable? No. One answer brings a further question. What's unfavorable for bhakti? It's not so much people, things, situations. The unfavorable thing is a particular way of seeing, relating to things, which is seeing things disconnected from Krishna. That's the only thing we need to renounce according to Rupa Goswami, when he gives the definition of what's renunciation for us. He gives the definition of his term, yukta-vairagya. This is a very important term. He makes that point in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Yukta-vairagya means proper renunciation. So what's proper renunciation for us? He says, anashaktasya vishayam yathartam upajunjataha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Prapanchikataya budhya harim sambandhi vasuna mumukshu viparityago falgu vairagyam katyate. Then the second verse speaks about falgu vairagya. Falgu vairagya means like false renunciation. So he says real renunciation means to, it's interesting because he's talking about real renunciation means to see everything, to not get attached to anything with me in the center, basically, and to see everything with Krishna as its center. So the thing we need to renounce is self-centeredness, which of course sounds, oh, that's the only thing. Yeah, that's the only thing. The most hard one to renounce. In one sense, it's easier to wear a loincloth and go to live to a cave in the Himalayas and still think that I'm the center of the world. Now, you can think that any place on the planet, even wearing loincloth in the Himalaya. So in one sense, this is tricky because this is very simple. The only thing you need to renounce is seeing things decentered from Krishna. But that's the root cause of all problems. So you need to go deep to really uproot such a misconception. But in one sense, we don't need to reject family. We don't need to reject the body, the emotions, money, cars, this world. We just need to learn how to relate to that, which may imply unlearn how to do that, because we have been doing that probably from the wrong place. And the wrong place are mostly two, as we talked the other day in UK, which are two sides of the same coin. One is to see everything around me as existing only for my own selfish self-centered enjoyment, so to say, separatistic view. That's to be rejected, bhoga. And tyaga is also to be rejected. You have to rejecting things, getting detached and renouncing things as if they were bad. Rupa Goswami says again, that can make your heart hard like a rock. And we are here supposed to melt the heart, to make it flow like a stream of uninterrupted oil or honey, different examples he gives. So, bhoga and tyaga are two sides of the same coin, raga dvesh, attachment and rejection, so to say. Bhakti is the middle path. Srimad Bhattan says, nirbino nati shakto bhakti yoga se siddhida. If you want to attain perfection in bhakti, bhakti siddhi, na nirbino nati shakto. You have to be not very attached and not very detached. If you are too attached to see everything with you in the center, it doesn't work. If you're too detached, that you start to reject everything instead of seeing that in connection to Krishna, that doesn't work either. So bhakti is the middle path. We detach and we attach. There is attachment and there is detachment, but it's some form of both. No, I'm detached only from seeing everything with me in the center. I am attached to seeing everything with Krishna in the center. And I interact with everything accordingly on that foundation. So renunciation means that. So I will say that when this verse of the Bhagavatam that you asked about originally, Lakshmi Priya, says, of renunciation, sannyas order is the thing. The point with that is sannyasis in the Gaudiya Sampradaya are meant to exemplify that particular type of renunciation that characterizes our tradition. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that does not happen, unfortunately. But that's the idea. No? If you enter into that order, you are supposed to embrace a certain type of renunciation when there is not absolute selfish, self-centered exploitation, nor there is like impractical rejection of things. But sometimes in my short experience, I've witnessed how interestingly when a Gaudiya Vaishnava sannyasi or someone in a monastic order who is kind of in the renunciate template thinks of renunciation mostly in terms of rejecting, this is bad, no? There starts to be lots of, what I'm rejecting, I'm not integrating it. I'm just rejecting it. So it remains an unintegrated thing. So since it's not properly integrated, since I haven't learned to deal with that properly, I haven't, how to say, I haven't transcended that. That's still there. Though I'm rejecting that externally, but I'm not internalizing, integrating all that. So eventually that comes again, and that comes again. And I reject, but instead of accepting it properly, and many times that emphasis on rejection ends up taking you to the other side of the coin, which is bhoga or exploitation or enjoyment in a selfish way. One takes you to the other somehow if you are not doing it properly. So that's why ideally a Gaudiya Vaishnava sannyasi or a renunciate in our tradition is to embody yukta-vairagya, this proper renunciation, when I don't need to reject things, I don't need to reject people, I don't need to reject gender, body, social position, work, anything, byproducts of modernity, science, technology. Nothing needs to be rejected. Everything needs to be connected or employed or seen as sacred, no? Because it is, as we were saying the other day, and with this I'm concluding my reply. Because many times this idea of rejection or renunciation is applied to the realm of matter, material energy, material world, and whatever comes from that. No? Again, body, family life, work, all that is to be renounced. So all that comes from a root misconception that matter is something bad, and that we need to redeem matter. Even when someone starts to become more oriented with yukta-vairagya, okay, we don't need to reject matter. We need just to take matter and engage matter in Krishna's service. So we appreciate the intention, but there's still one misconception there. What is the misconception? Fasten your seatbelt, 1 minute, especially those who are not in the UK these days. So the misconception is that I am engaging matter in Krishna's service. While, for example, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will describe one of his commentaries in the Bhagavatam, Maya Shakti, another word for material energy, is a Vaishnavi of the highest order who is already fully engaged in the service of Krishna, way more than how much we are engaged. So in other words, material energy is engaged in Krishna's service. I don't need to engage matter in Krishna's service. Matter is engaged in Krishna's service more than I. So when I'm engaging matter in Krishna's service, what is going on actually is I am being engaged in Krishna's service through matter, by the grace of matter, if you want to put it that way. No. So that's a more humbling perspective and realistic. So I was the only one who was not engaged in Krishna's service. I'm the missing piece of the puzzle. It's not that I will redeem the world by engaging every atom in Krishna's service. That's already happening. Arrived too late, sorry. But you are the one missing in engaging in Krishna's service. So matter, but by being a highest Vaishnavi, she's giving us her grace and giving us the opportunity for us to be engaged in Krishna's service through her. So that's a way more aligned, realistic perspective in what we speak about yukta-vairagya. No, again, instead of thinking, try to see the difference. Instead of seeing matter, A, as something that exists solely for my selfish personal plans. No. B, instead of seeing matter as something that is ontologically, intrinsically evil that needs to be rejected as soon as possible. No. See, instead of seeing matter as something, okay, it's not that bad, and it doesn't to be rejected, but let's redeem and engage matter in Krishna service. No. Approach matter as a highest Vaishnavi who is giving me sadhu sangha, and allowing me by her generosity of being a greatest devotee to engage myself in service. I am the one missing in the whole equation. That's yukta-vairagya proper, I would say. And yukta means proper in itself, so I don't need to say it twice. No. Yukta-vairagya. I'm relating to everything from that place of everything is giving me sadhu sangha and allowing me to engage in bhakti. Maya, again, one word of Maya means is mercy. So Maya is giving me Maya. No? Material energy is giving me Maya, mercy, to allow me to engage in Seva through matter. So anyhow, some thoughts of what ultimately it means for us to engage in renunciation. So I hope that helps somehow. Yeah.
Yes, it's very clear now, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a small comment here by Anutam Chitra. She says, those which are rejected are seen as obstacles to be avoided, while these may actually be stepping stones that could take us closer to the divine, thereby transcending them. Yeah, yes. I like to say transcending doesn't mean rejecting anything. It just means integrating everything into bhakti, into the proper equation. So yeah, we choose to see things as obstacles, as you say, or as stepping stones. It's all about the orientation, and that's why we go back to Sambandha Gyan, what we mentioned in the first answer. When you receive proper Sambandha Gyan, you receive these type of ideas. Sambandha, again, everything is in connection to Krishna. That's it. The word Sambandha already is setting the whole education, the tone of the whole education. Let's learn about Sambandha Gyan. What does it mean, Sambandha Gyan? The knowledge that everything exists in connection and bonding with God. Therefore, the implication is nothing needs to be rejected, and everything is a facilitator of service, a facilitator of potential, a stepping stone, in your words, Anutam Chitra. There are no obstacles. Srila Sri Maharaj will say that so many times. There are no obstacles outside. We are only creating in our minds a world of limitations, a world of obstacles. That's our own mental fantasy, our own world, mind world creation. That's it. So we need to just dismantle that. Yeah. Thank you. Rasangi?
Haribol. I just have to say that what comes to mind is proper adjustment.
Yeah.
Proper adjustment. It's like all the ingredients are there, but if you don't have them properly adjusted, it's totally different. When the proper adjustment comes, like I have heart palpitations right now. My heart is beating fast because of the adjusted way you presented that material. It's like,
I don't want to give you a heart attack live on Zoom, sorry.
No, it's good one. It's good one. It's like pitter patter, pitter patter, pitter patter, pitter. And I also want to say that coming out of the retreat, and I know I wasn't there, but
you were there.
Oh, by watching and listening, sometimes I listened to twice the classes.
So then you were more than any of us in the classes.
No, I wasn't really, but I feel like some of my jealousness went away. I was a little bit feeling jealous. I don't know if it's the same as envy, but I was missing out and I was sad. But listening and partaking that way helped me to feel better and more connected and happy. And I want to say that one of the major things I got out of it was the Contemplative Prayer workshop, which I loved and I'll probably listen to again. It brought me to a place of validating my own prayer, which hasn't really been very active for years. I had to read somebody else's prayer and enter into their mood. And that makes me feel like it's crazy making, that we don't have a right to pray directly, that it's not somehow bona fide to say your own prayer. That's nuts to me right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm very grateful for that realization during that workshop. That was very profound. Being as old as I am and around as long as I've been. So thank you for that so much. And my question is.
Oh, there was a question. Okay.
My question, Maharaj, is,
yes.
You may not choose to answer this now, but I just revealing my heart in the light of another commander-in-chief of the army of Srila Prabhupada having a big fall down, or so-called, whatever it's called. There's so much confusion and disturbance caused by this. And even among my close friends, we're just agitated by different parts of it. And I would love some proper adjustment to understand this, like not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Does this mean all of his wonderful deeds and kindness before was not valid? How do we adjust for mistakes? How can this be seen and put in context so that it doesn't throw everything down the toilet, so to speak, sorry. But, oh my God, does it mean that Krishna consciousness doesn't work? You know what I mean? Is it like...
Yeah, I get the point, yeah.
And I know that you've been through this more than once, or at least once, and I'm asking for some way to look at it that makes sense, that maybe I can share with my friends, my close friends, that could help make sense of it.
Yeah. Thank you. So, well, first of all, happy that you were part of our retreat. You were under that exercise of composing your own prayers. I think that was one of the highlights for many of those who were in the retreat in 3D. And it's like giving yourself permission to relate personally to Krishna. As basic as that sounds, composing my own prayers is just having my own voice in my conversation with God. So I think that's meant to be in a personal relationship, radically personal relationship. I can understand why in the beginning we may be suggested otherwise, but also it's there should be a healthy transition to individuation, as we talk so many times, and I will say, arguably, I will say that I'm not saying that as an absolute, and I'm not saying with this, let's stop reciting the prayers of other acharyas or singing their songs, but I will say in many ways, many cases, when we get to be able to offer our own prayers, naturally, those will be the prayers that will have the greatest impact in our practice, because those will be the ones who come from the most genuine place. So that's it. Religion, proper adjustment, that's important expression. Srila Siddha Maharaj will use that expression. I don't know how much you are aware of that, but he will describe religion as that. Someone asked him once, so what's religion? And of course, so many things can be said. What's religions? You can define the word and religare, relinking, or religion this, religion that. But he gave his, of course, unique answers. And he said, religion means proper adjustment. That was his answer. Religion means proper adjustment. Of course, he continued to explain then, but it's interesting that you quote that idea, because that's what essential religion is about, proper adjustment. And the proper adjustment is how to say, ongoing. No, it's not like, okay, I will do my proper adjustment and okay, everything is adjusted, now I'm practicing religion. So that's on one side. Regarding the situation you're asking, I'm not aware of any particular case that you may be having in mind. A case, maybe something happened recently, I don't know. I've been lost, disconnected from the world for the last 10 days in a UK castle, so to say. But even if I don't know the details, because of course in many cases details help to offer a more specific opinion of what happened, how it happened. But even besides not knowing at all what happened, with whom, on anything, things happen, as you know, as I know. So I will reply to the question in a more generic way, which I think hopefully sheds light on whatever may be happening specifically. I personally don't like the word fall down, to be honest, too much, because it's one of those words that throughout generations has been loaded with layers of implied meaning, which tend to put the fallen person into a kind of perpetual condition, branded forever in that particular category. No, like we are putting people in boxes, like we have talked many times. Oh, he's an aparadi. That's it. You enter that area, there's no coming back from that. In the way people refer to the term, no? He is an aparadi. He has fallen down. It's kind of like perpetual scar on top of you. And I don't think that's what's falling down. I mean, we are all fallen. No. Strictly, what's falling also, no? Because sometimes we use the term very heavily, but then when we speak about what do you mean by falling down, many times we say, oh, he was a renunciant, and I don't know, he broke his monastic vows, which I'm not promoting. Let's do that, but also in some cases that's not as delicate as some other forms of quote unquote falling down, which may entail being envious and being full of hatred and being full of hypocrisy and denial, although you are maintaining all your vows externally. You follow my point? So sometimes we become more scandalized by some external falling down, quote unquote, than on a daily basis worse type of things that are absolutely normalized, invisible, and nobody pays too much attention to, and that we may be indulging in them. So I remember once I was talking with a devotee in Argentina, and he was kind of, I like how he said, because he will hear so many times devotees say like, oh, he fell down, or I fell down, and he will and he will say, I sometimes, because they will use the word, he fell in Maya. That was the expression. He fell in Maya, I fell in Maya. And the devotee said, I sometimes fall in Krishna. No, because I'm always falling in Maya. That's the ongoing constant situation. And sometimes I fall in Krishna. No, like humbling the whole conversation, so to say, because when we say, oh, he fell in Maya, I'm absolutely immune to that on mostly of the day. At sometimes I, you follow my point? So sometimes we use these terms, we weaponize these words, and many times against others, instead of somehow normalizing the condition we, most of us, may be on some degree or another affected by, how to say, a lack of full perception of reality. And from that foundation, I think we can be more generous and more understanding with whatever happens to anyone else, no? And of course, me personally, I've gone through some delicate situations with my former gurus, especially with my first gurus, in connection to quote unquote falling down, as it is usually employed, the term. And again, I've seen all the varieties of reactions, from hating the person, putting him in a box forever, wanting the worst possible health for that person, suffering. And I can understand reactions, emotions are coming in the moment. It may be difficult to contain. I try to also empathize with everyone's situations, as difficult as that may be. It was enough for me to digest my own process, but at the same time, so many other situations were going on. And of course, we can go through so many degrees of emotionality and varieties of it. But I will say, and that's my opinion, at the end of the day, we have to be understanding with the person, in the sense of, again, I'm not talking about any particular case here because I'm not having anything in mind. But even if someone who was a practitioner for years and had some particular difficulty, doesn't mean that Bhakti doesn't work. It doesn't mean that that person was a hoax from day one. It doesn't mean that this that must have happened for this to be happening. But many times when that's happened, many of us also like to reach conclusion. Okay, why this happened? No, let's explore, and we may have no clue why this is happening. No, we may not be able to, and maybe the best way to understand why this is happening is to contact the person personally, but no, not from a like interviewing him. What have you done for this to happen so I can get the answer? But from a more friendly, compassionate place of supporting, because I mean, who is immune to anything, right? Who is immune to anything? Srila Siddhar Maharaj will say always, no, like we never have to take for granted our situation, our realization. It can happen. Whatever other people is doing, it may not be happening to us in this lifetime. Probably we already did that hundreds of times in the past. So we have no reason to, of course, to become proud, to develop some superiority complex, to downplay anyone. Again, some people, of course, may be doing something which is not correct, which may be doing harm to others. That can happen. And sometimes, unfortunately, there's no accountability for that. There's no recognition for that. So I want also to, of course, to be aware of that can happen. I mean, again, I've gone through that myself with one of my gurus, or not only one. And there's lack of accountability when there is different forms of abuse, where there is sexual abuse, pastoral abuse, and that's not healthy, and that person needs to hold himself, herself accountable. And if that's not happening, of course, we may not be able to force that, but at the end of the day, even in those cases, as we were talking the other day, I like to see, of course, behind all that, there is a jiva who is somehow broken, for whatever reason is broken, is unwhole, needs help, maybe suffering, is fear. And of course, the victims, if there was abuse, the victims are also broken. So I'm not saying just let's be compassionate to the perpetrator, if there was such, but to everyone also, no? In different ways. Compassion will take different forms. Again, compassion doesn't mean just, oh, pure, you did this abuse, but we love you no matter what. So, that may be a way of spoiling the abuser and promoting more of that. But we have to find a place in our heart. It may take time. It may take time. So I can understand that for some people is, don't come with that Maharaj to me now. I'm angry now, and I need to be angry now, and it's fine. I understand it. I have gone through that myself. But I will, yes, advise, don't see anger as the last stop of the journey. No, don't conclude in anger. Don't conclude in resentment, because it can make you bitter. It can kill you in so many ways. So we have to eventually be expert enough to find compassion and understanding as to why that particular person did what he or she did. And even if we need to keep a distance from a person, still stay in some well-wishing place. No, stay in some well-wishing place to that soul which, and again, I'm talking in general, so I'm not pointing to anything, to anyone, or maybe I'm pointing to me, because again, I'm a potential serial killer. In potential, we are all that. Sorry to say, and I'm not having any of those plans here in Delhi. I didn't come here to appear on the news. But as I mentioned in my third book that I'm writing, we have an ever-evolving potential in the most beautiful direction, but also we have an ever-devolving potential in the darkest possible direction if we don't manage our potential in the right direction. So in potential, we are all an Adolf Hitler. And it's not that I'm insulting any of you. I'm just talking about potential. So we have to be very humble, very careful. And yeah, that's what I can say. Again, a more specific situation, of course, I will with more specific information, which I won't say that's the place here to maybe discuss that. We can talk more personal if there is something more specific that needs to be addressed. But even if it's a situation I don't know firsthand, how much can I talk about it? Well, because so many things are being said by third persons, by online. I mean, so I also am careful. I've seen myself how many things are being said about other people which are not true. So, or which are true but are not being said from a right place. So many things can happen. So at least let's try to be generous with one another, open, and have proper communication, and not rushing into concluding and putting people in boxes if we have not done our best to communicate with the person. Because if not, that's gossip, basically. That's gossip. That's the very first thing that Mahaprabhu prevented or instructed Raghunath Das Goswami not to do. No, as you may know, when Raghunath Das Goswami, he's a Prayojan Tattvacharya. He's the Acharya who represents the ultimate goal of our tradition, Prem, more specifically Radha Dasyam Raghunath Das Goswami Ki Jai. And he's wanting a personal, private instruction from Mahaprabhu himself. So you may wonder, wow, what will be that instruction that he will receive? How it will begin? And Mahaprabhu starts saying, Gramya katana ashranibe, Gramya vartana kahibe. Don't listen nor speak gossip. That's how it begins. Mahaprabhu's instruction to Raghunath Das Goswami. Don't be a gossiper. Of course, he was not a gossiper, but he's making the point, if you want to reach everything else that comes after that instruction, because he say other things, but first don't fail in this one. Don't be a gossiper. And gossiper can mean so many things. Can be just talking about people instead of talking to people. We get accustomed to talk about people, but many times we don't talk to people, at least not to the people we are talking about. We are talking to people about other people, instead of talking to the people we are talking about. You follow my point? These are these famous basic things that don't speak about someone, those things that you will not be willing to say in front of that same person. But that has been made kind of a religion in social media, basically. You have a keyboard and you feel like a Shakti-based avatar, empowered to speak about everything and everyone in a conclusive way, as long as you have a keyboard protecting you. Now, when the keyboard and the screen is not there and you have to face the person, oh my gosh, then words disappear magically. I've seen that a few times. So that's gossip. That's gossip. Not to talk. Not to take the necessary time to, if I heard this person fell down, whatever the case or situation, I mean, I can choose two things. I stop the conversation there, or if I want to enter into that, I will take the necessary time to be properly informed, ideally talking with the person in the first place and coming from a place, hopefully, of compassion and understanding, and then reaching whatever conclusions. But if I'm not willing to commit myself to that process, and I just take things from the distance and reach conclusions, all of which generally keep me in a comfort zone, and make me feel higher just because someone else is failing miserably, all that is, I mean, that's true. Many times we just feel that we are more advanced by speaking how less advanced someone else is. It's weird how this logic functions. It's like, I start to analyze all your mistakes, and that somehow makes me pious. By speaking how wrong you are, I become more and more correct. It's crazy, it's madness, but that's how conditioned beings think. The more we point at the wrong thing, the more we are acquiring personal credit, though we are not doing anything good per se. So that's how it works, and that's basically systematized in modern society through social media and all that. So everyone is riding that wave, Gaudiya Vaishnavas included in many cases. So, and all that is Gramya Katha, all that is gossip, all that is evasive, escapism, superficial relationships. All that prevents real intimacy and depth and wonder and love. So we should be careful of that.
So Maharaj, what you just
that's what I can say.
What you described is called narcissism, actually. Narcissistic mind is thinking like that. And it's very common, very common. And then people look very successful also sometimes and be like that. I just wanted to say that the last thing is, so lean in with compassion, but lean into always being compassionate and understanding, able to forgive, I guess, But then what if there's the honest piece makes a difference for me? If there's no honesty, if there's cover up and lies, that makes it even harder to come to terms with it. It would seem that if there's honesty, oh, okay, I understand. I can forgive. And I know I was in that Bhima Sagrahi said if the former molesters who perpetrated against the kids would come forward and say they're sorry and speak the truth, they could forgive. That sounds really far out, but that dishonesty is so messes with your mind a lot. The cover-ups and the lies about it is what's really damaging, I think. That's all.
And I always like to add, and with this I conclude, since we have two more raised hands, even when someone is utterly dishonest, and of course that's something very distasteful, not to say the most distasteful thing of all, but even behind that dishonesty, there is fear. Now, the person is terrified of being honest because of false, because of misperception of his own being, that one feels it's being threatened if I really acknowledge, let's say I did something really wrong, and I'm terrified about you knowing that I did that. So I'm dishonest. And I'm lying, and I'm cheating, and I'm creating a facade and all the stuff that becomes more and more snowball-like. But behind all that, I'm completely fractured and afraid and broken because I'm totally identified with a sense of self that seems to be threatened by me acknowledging my mistakes. In other words, I'm talking in general, not every case, but in many cases, those people who have a hard time holding themselves accountable are the people who have the most fragile self-identities. So they have such a fragile self-identity that if they allow themselves to admit they made a mistake, that already fragile identity shatters to pieces forever, and they are not able to even conceive that. So it's even an unconscious defense mechanism but comes from a very broken and fragile sense of it. When this, I'm not saying poor guys, allow them to continue doing abuse. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying it's healthy for us to even see beyond the dishonesty and see beyond that. There is a very fragile, afraid, terrified person who is overly identified with a sense of self that will become shattered if he or she confesses in his or her own idea, of course. The healthy pattern will be, no, the more I become honest, the more I am myself, the more I will be accepted by who I am. Because again, many times, some people is born in an environment, and again, the situation is complex. We may be in an environment where mistakes are not allowed, where you have to fit in, when you cannot belong, when you are not welcome as you are, especially if you're in a position of authority or leadership or guruship. You are expected to be a superhero. So you are born with that narrative. So then you honestly begin to practice and then start to become dishonest in trying to not show that, because you are not supposed to do that. And that becomes kind of the normal pattern, what is expected. So you end up being dishonest, addicted to being dishonest even, because you have no other option, in the sense you never heard another point of reference. There was no other second possibility. You follow my point? So sometimes it's beyond the particular person making the mistake, abuse, falling down. Sometimes a whole systemic issue. And one is a child of that particular system, and one is just operating on the basis of the narrative of the system, which is what needs to be dismantled to create further healthy interaction for the next generation. And of course, the person who did the mistake somehow needs to be held accountable. But again, it's a whole systemic thing. If we just isolate the case and the person and try to chastise or correct or purify or whatever still the whole thing is happening on a systemic and the collective unconscious of the group. So you need to go there and implant, so to say, a new narrative to counteract decades or millennia of misperception. So it's a big topic, of course. But yeah, I think it's important to keep as broader of a picture as we can when these things happen in isolated cases, to go immediately to the environment. What's around that? What is something that is supporting that? Is that person a child, a byproduct of collective trauma that she received from the previous generations? So many things are there, so many layers we need to heal. So many of these conversations we need to have. Yeah. Thank you, Rasangi. We go to the two further raised hands because we have not so much time, but Bhakti Rasa from Charlotte.
So I have two quick comments. One on the last thing that you were just saying. So like the systemic thing, it seems like, so our responsibility is also systemically to create an environment that fosters vulnerability of the abusers so that they can come forward and not think that they'll be, kicked out of wherever. And that will avail them to be able to experience unconditional love that one can get by exposing
because
the darkest parts.
In that connection, I would say, if we do not do that, if just someone commits an abuse or makes a mistake from this sequence that I just described as a child of a systemic mistake, and we just criticize that, and we are not doing anything to promote a new system, a new option for healing that, how much my criticism is valid, how much is not increasing the problem. No? So again, externally and publicly, it will seem like I'm very valid, I'm pointing to the abuser, but I'm not solving the problem, I'm making it worse in one sense. So yeah, that's important.
Yeah, so in these lines, I was talking one time with my husband about this, and the thing that we came up with was that usually devotees are, the best that a devotee can ever be is the worst that they have ever been. Like that's what we see, the potential, potentially it ends, it caps at the worst that they've ever been. So it's
yeah, again, honesty and vulnerability to begin the whole thing. No?
Yeah.
The systemic healing has to begin with, allowing for a safe space for people to be vulnerable and know that they won't be burned at the stake or exiled to another planet or sent to hell for eternity or branded like this. Like, when that's made clear and a safe space is provided and healing is occurring, accountability follows as a natural byproduct. So we cannot force accountability if we are not providing the arena for accountability. No, so we cannot expect accountability in an organic, spontaneous way if people didn't know about that, didn't know about that's possible even. So first we have to make that clear. It's possible to be vulnerable and hold yourself accountable without being put into a box of sin for eternity or something, and without you losing your self-identity. You can be vulnerable and fragile and a human, even as a sannyasi, as a guru, and it's okay. People won't leave you, and if they leave you, that shows that they were following you for the wrong reasons. They were just needed a superhero daddy figure now appearing as a guru. No? So transference issues, as they call them. Yeah. You have a second commentary, Bhakti Rasa?
I do. I have a question. I just have a question. You were mentioning when you're speaking to Yugal Kishore, and then again you mentioned it about that Maya means mercy. So could you just expand on that a little bit? How is it?
Yeah, Maya is one of the words of Maya is mercy. I don't want to become too forcing connection between words, so to say. But for me, it's not a coincidence, so to say, that the same word we use for the material energy, it also translates as mercy. In other words, again, there is grace waiting for us in Maya. No, there is Maya waiting for us in Maya, if we want to take Maya as mercy and the material energy. No, by properly relating to Maya, material energy, there will be Maya, there will be grace, mercy, because again, and this is a huge rebooting of the system, so to say, because we probably haven't been talked like that many times. We haven't talked like the material energy is the highest, a Vaishnavi of the highest order that allows you to engage in service, and you should be humbled and grateful to her. But that's in the purport of Bhakti Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to the Bhagavatam 2.5.53, I think. So it's there. It's not that we are inventing all this stuff to somehow accommodate things. So there is grace in matter. Matter is a Vaishnavi, Maya Shakti, personification of material energy. Maya Devi is a Vaishnavi. Vaishnavas are oceans of mercy, right? Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu vyayevacha patitanam pavanebhyas. They are the redeemer of the fallen. They are oceans of mercy. So we can be redeemed from our fallen condition by the grace of matter, if we associate with her properly. So yeah, I think it's a nice meditation to think about Maya at the same time as material energy and mercy, and not just like a hyper-localized mercy outside of the realm of matter. No, not think that mercy is outside here, somewhere else. No, but yeah, it's a good way good entry point to the sacredness of this world, the sacredness of everything. That's what we're talking also these days in the UK. That's what I can say so far, so it doesn't become so late. And Bhadra is raising her hand from New Zealand, so we have a few more minutes to address your question, and then we will be sharing a little bit in breakout rooms before we finish, so don't leave. Bhadra, please. Nice to see you.
Oh, well, Maharaj, wonderful to see you too. I've been following your... actually, I nearly took my hand down because I had a few things I want to mention, but I realize we've only got another few minutes. Yes, I've been following your journey, and thank you so much for all your words. I get little light bulbs of insight coming all the time from your words. So it's wonderful. And I just want to know, where are you staying in Vrindavan, if you don't mind telling me privately, if you like, because my son and daughter-in-law are there at the moment, and I'd love them to come and meet you if it suits you.
Hey, yeah, no problem. But I don't have any particular. I don't have the address where I will be staying yet. That's an interesting situation. So I'm waiting for that. I know there is a place, but I don't have the address. But it's nearby the Madan Mohan temple. So I will suggest that your daughter and son can communicate with me by private message, and I assume I will get the address tomorrow, because I'm supposed to be there the day after tomorrow. So, but that will be in the area, so they can send me a message.
They're staying very close. Well, just hardly a kilometer down the road from where Madan Mohan is.
Okay.
They're staying right beside Imri Tala.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. Beautiful.
Yeah.
One of my favorite places. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
My question is something that you could probably give not just one lecture on, but a series of lectures. So I don't expect you to answer it in full now, or even at all, but I'll just pose it anyway. Are you talking about rejection?
What? Rejection?
Rejection, rather than yukta-vairagya. Just noting how Mahaprabhu seemed to reject all female company. And I'm just one. I would like to have an explanation of the pastime of his banishing of Chota Haridasa. But don't answer it now. I realize we're running out of time. So, but maybe just keep it in mind.
I'll say something. You have to ask Anutam Chitra about Chota Haridasa. Remember? Anutam Chitra, she asked the question some months ago already, maybe a year ago, but I remember she asked the question. Well, a few words again require some unfolding. I wouldn't say that Mahaprabhu rejected woman, but of course he was a sannyasi in a particular time, place, circumstance in society. So he tried to also although he himself say, Yatir ba naham vipro nachana rapatir napi vaishana sudro naham varnina chagriha patir novanasto yatir ba. I'm not a sannyasi, he will say, in the sense of externally I'm a sannyasi, but internally my identification goes way beyond Varna and ashram. So, but nonetheless, he respected the codes of the time of how to behave with the opposite sex, in this case, at that time. But I wouldn't say that he rejected women. In fact, one of his 4 most intimate associates was a woman. That's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Ramananda Roy, Swarup Damodar, Sikhi Mahiti, and his sister Madhavi Devi. So Madhavi Devi was one of the 4 people that Mahaprabhu spoke Rasa Katha with very intimately, and she was a lady. So that says something. There's this famous instance when Mahaprabhu was taking darshan of Jagannath, and a lady comes running and climbs on his back. Imagine such a situation. I imagine a sannyasi taking darshan of the deity, and a lady starts to climb on the shoulders and back of the sannyasi because she was too small. Mahaprabhu was too tall, so she had no chance of having darshan, and she was creative. Now she applied creativity in Bhakti, and she climbed off Mahaprabhu's shoulders. That was the only way, and that was appreciated by Mahaprabhu, I must tell you. When his associates saw what was going on, they interpreted the situation from a more external perspective. I say, what are you doing? How do you dare to climb a sannyasi? You're a lady, come down. And Mahaprabhu just saw the situation, and he said, if just I will have that level of longing that she had. So he didn't become angry. He didn't rejected her. He actually praised her. Of course, he didn't praise a woman. He praised her bhakti, because again, he's not seeing man or woman. He's seeing the essence, though on certain circumstances, he's keeping, so to say, the social etiquette. So his mission is not highly disturbed. There was already different disturbances against Mahaprabhu's movement. Don't forget that. He was not in a place where everyone was ki jai, ki jai, ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan, ki jai. So what's the need of adding more layers of disturbance by certain ways of behaving that may create that? So that on one side. And regarding Chota Haridasa, long story, but long story short, though in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it may seem that Mahaprabhu rejects him kind of whimsically and without any reason, in the purports of one verse, and I remember I sent those to Anuttam Chitra as well, because I did not mention that in the class. I came to know about that later, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in the purport to one of the verses in that section, he mentions how actually Chota Haridasa had, if you want to use a fall down, but he was looking in a very, because it is said that he went to beg rice from Madhavi Devi, this inner associate of Mahaprabhu, but she was an elder lady. So again, it seems even more strange why Mahaprabhu rejected that just by receiving some rice from an elder, very highly advanced Vaishnavi. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that Chota Haridasa had looked in a lustful way to Madhavi Devi's daughter. So that's not mentioned in the book, but that's revealed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So that was Mahaprabhu's main point. No, because again, Chota Haridasa was a renunciant. So Mahaprabhu took that stance to show, hey, don't be a renunciant and be doing all that stuff at the same time. That's not the idea. And of course, beyond what happened externally, we learn from the scripture how Chota Haridasa was eternally associated with Mahaprabhu, and was singing after passing away, and Mahaprabhu was delighting his singing and praising him. So there is a bigger picture to this particular thing. So we should be very careful not to isolate one part and over amplify it and try to reapply that now here in this separate context and distort the whole thing. That's what I can say so far today, as much as time allows.
Awesome, thank you.
I hope that helped. Thank you for the question. So I'll put the discussion to rest here for a few minutes, for a few days. But before that, don't leave me, please. We will continue with our breakout rooms here in Zoom. But before that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Gaur Gadadhar Gaur Nityananda ji ki jai. Shri Radha Mohan Radha Govinda Dev Radha Gopinath Ji ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur